Good afternoon and welcome to Kitty Talks. We share inspirational life stories that encourage you to create yours. And today I have with me David Brower. He is the Sensorial Guy. So David, what is the Sensorial Guy?
Thanks for having me, Kitty. This is going to be great. It's a lot of different things, but really what I'm striving in this world is to spread a sense that we can actually live an amazing life that's a lot driven by pleasure, which I think a lot of people have misconstrued today, and believing that somehow there has to be a tremendous amount of pain actually to help us live a life that we love. And so I've really built my life and built the experiences that I do with people now based on a belief and an experience now that I've had with a lot of people, that we can actually get a sense of who we are and really what we want to enhance and evolve in ourselves, stimulated by something that's pleasurable much more than something that is, necessarily painful or, kind of a little bit kind of scarcity mindset, right? I'm much more of the abundant, heart set, soul set, spirit energy set that really believes that, life is to be loved. And what I mean by that is to really take full advantage of everything that we feel and that we taste and we smell. It's kind of to open up this palette that we have in the world when it feels like everyone today is narrowing it down, to follow a certain diet or to only hang out with certain like-minded people. Or I believe there's a diversity of emotion and ways of being, and a lot of it really, when you associate it with a certain sense of pleasure and appreciation for beauty and these types of things, for me, it actually helps us actually transform our life. It helps us get the shifts that most people are looking for to live a more qualitative life, a life that's more aligned with who they are, a life where they take ownership for their choices, where they become a real leader in moving things forward, but in a way that's not so much the stick, it's much more the carrot, but the carrot actually looks like something pretty darn tasty. It's not a carrot, right?
I've seen pictures of your retreats, your weekends, your evenings, and oh my goodness, it looks amazing. It looks like a complete transformational experience that people are going through when they're with you. So I'm incredibly interested to experience that myself. I may hasten to add.
That will happen, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. So what was it that inspired you? How did you kind of come to that point in your life? What was, when did you decide, right, I'm going to be the Sensorial Guy and this is what I want to do?
Well, I probably felt that this is really who I am, this mix of different kind of activities or passions, like this crossroads, this vortex, this target was always part of what I was doing in my life in one way or another, but never all mixed together. I grew up in a family that was in the entertainment business. We lived in Beverly Hills, and we did a lot of stuff related to obviously theater and cinema. Both my parents were in that industry, in that world, on the performer side as well as on the business side. And so I grew up in kind of a household that gave a lot of attention to the perforing arts.
Were they like in the movies, your parents? Or because I do, I'm obviously you and I've had a conversation previously, and I'm going to have to share this because it was one of my favorite programs when I was a teenager. But you actually went to Beverly Hills High School, which was obviously in 90210, which I watched avidly for like the first 5 years of my teenage life. So yeah, you actually went to that school, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
What was that?
What was that like? It was an amazing place to go to school.
And were there Ferraris in the car park?
Yeah, there's Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Porsches, but driven by 16-year-olds. So that's part of the how do you call it? That's part of the sort of the the motivation and the terrible differentiation that suddenly, your ego grabs onto when you're especially that age, and kind of feeling that you're not enough. You don't have enough. You never have enough. I mean, with people that have so much money around you, like every week someone would come with a nose job, a bandage on their nose, live in extraordinary houses, go on holidays, every holiday skiing, Latin America, wherever. So it's quite destabilizing, that, and also all the money that's for drugs, and you can imagine kind of everything that's going on there. So it creates a tremendous amount of tension in a lot of ways, and how everyone dealt with that is really what really forged their character. Like, they certainly forged my character. I didn't really like high school too much. Actually, it was a period where I was too small. I wasn't, so-called, I guess, wealthy enough in my own mind. And I just started losing friends, and couldn't get into any of the sports teams because I was too small. And I was extremely self-conscious, took everything so personally. And I thought I would maybe go into sort of this acting world, and that didn't really go anywhere. Meanwhile, my parents were kind of struggling in their relationship and ended up getting divorced. And so I was kind of caught in a turmoil that didn't make me feel like I was really in a place that I wanted to be in some respects. I couldn't really find my grounding. And yet today I look back and it's really amazing. I say, wow, that's actually what forged my very independent character.
Right.
Like very, having to go the extra mile outside the school, for example, to take Taekwondo classes, or get up at 6 a.m. to go to 0 mile jogging with 5 other students, all of them like super high performers, right? And I'm just there because I can't play any of their sports because I'm too small, even though I'm super athletic.
Yeah.
And I came from grammar school, and I was like, one of the, kind of great people in the school, athletic-wise, and with girlfriends and great friends and all these kinds of things, even though apparently I learned recently I was always surrounding myself with big bully guys as my friends.
Right.
So I'm looking at that. But yeah, it's really, it really shifts your consciousness because you're not even aware that there's maybe another way of looking at yourself and the world, and getting appreciation that's not just about all this exterior stuff that makes you, interesting, beautiful, attractive to someone, feel good in your skin. You don't realize that you actually have a lot of agency over the choices that you make and where you go from it and how you react to that. And clearly at the time, I didn't react very well. I was doing a bit of drugs and drinking stuff and ended up getting sick a lot. And so left all my friends and they left me because we just couldn't hang out anymore.
Yeah.
And, boom, I was kind of all alone for a bit of a period in high school. Well, but I look back on that today and I give it such wow, that was my path.
Yeah.
That.
Well, you hear it so much, because obviously this kind of a world full of extremes, and if you're in that environment, it's so easy, you hear it from people who are in the Hollywood industry, and obviously it's too much, So what was it that taught you? Obviously you can see that that's part of your path. Why do you think you needed to go through that?
I think I needed to go through that. I feel like I needed to go through that to appreciate, firstly, that, nobody knows anything. And that's a famous expression in Hollywood. Really, nobody knows anything. This is what happened when George Lucas was, passing around Star Wars and no one wanted the movie. Why? Because no one knows anything. Yeah. And then why did the one studio, which I think was Universal, took the movie? Because nobody knows anything, right? So, once you can really embody that and appreciate that, you realize on one side, you got to argue for what you feel in your heart and be passionate about that. And at the same time, not take things so personal. You're going to constantly be shot down. No idea is good enough. No story is good enough. And, at the end of the day, you got to have the resistance to not take that to heart. And at the same time, have the heart in you to keep your heart in it. So it's it's a really beautiful dance, but I think that's easier to it's easier to live with if you don't let your head kind of screw with you. As the head is really what gives the interpretation to what's happening. When if we can kind of get out of that and the focus on that and get more into, realizing that there's more there, and it doesn't have to be that way. And there's no dead end, and there are lots of other avenues and lots of other solutions. And no doesn't necessarily mean no tomorrow. I mean, so to give yourself a little bit of a break and not take things so dramatically personally or so like, a no is a failure, and just keep going. So you learn a lot of tenacity through those types of experiences where ideas or movies or things like this don't fly, or, even when it does happen, it flops or whatever. But, you just keep getting up and keep going. You're only as good as your next movie, as they say, which is a great way to keep you looking. What's the next movie there? And also you realize, when you play in stories and stuff a lot, you realize, we all have a story that's in the making. It's all really our movie. So if we can live less vicariously, and bring that more into a more visceral, a more direct experience of the world, where the daring that we're taking is actually us getting into our own movie. We're the one directing and starring in our own movie. We're not just starring and letting someone direct us, right? We suddenly become a real auteur of our life, and that's full of a lot of stuff.
Well, it's a really good point what you make, because obviously your experiences make people be in the moment. And actually, when we are trying to find our passion and purpose, it's, it can be too easy to think, oh, it lies better over there. And actually, what we do have to enjoy is the here and now, because every bit of it is part of our past. By the sounds of things, that's kind of really what you're getting people to tune into with what you're doing.
Yeah, and to connect with themselves, not so through the head. It's like this great question of, you just say to somebody, how do you feel about that? And they say, well, I think I feel. I'm like, no. How do you feel about it? Well, I think I feel. No, don't pass it this way, right? Kind of feel it here and come from there. Because for me, really, at the end of the day, life is this emotional energy core that we heal. That's really one of the purposes of our life, is to heal that and to cultivate and grow that and to open that and share that with the world and with others. And we can't do that if we're completely dominated by the head. This expression, is your heart in it? There's a reason for that, right? It's one thing to have your head in the game, but for me, if your heart isn't, there, the head will figure it out. But if the heart isn't in that, I don't know how long you can last really waking up in the morning, looking yourself in the mirror, taking care of yourself, not suddenly becoming distracted by taking drugs and trying to solve sort of, stuff that you're going through without actually listening more to your instincts and your intuition and your heart. Yeah.
So you went through the period where you kind of came off the rails a little bit, and delved into the wrong places to find kind of satisfaction. What happened next?
Well, I was living in the States up till I got through college, and I was completely being driven by this obsession, as everyone was there, that you got to pick a living, you got to race along, you got to engage in something, and I just wasn't clear at all on who I was or what I wanted to do. I was 21, and there's so much pressure, when you graduate from school about what are you doing next. Where are you going next? And it's like everyone has a story about, oh, I'm going this, I'm doing this, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. I'd actually taken the LSAT exam, which is the law school entrance exam that you take. I took 2 preparatory courses for this thing, but nobody does this, okay?
Wow.
And I still failed horribly.
Oh.
I mean, shame horribly, It's like, I'm like drinking vodka, jumping up on the bed, I was so upset. And I kind of got a sense, I feel then, that I needed a break somehow, because I didn't know where this was going. I'll take a break for a year and a half and, go travel to Europe, and we'll just kind of see what comes of this. I didn't That was kind of my response to this. And I think it was a gut response. It was a heart response because my head couldn't figure this out. I couldn't reconcile with myself that I should fight through this, that it's just, you just got to, be tenacious and, just deal with it. And again, to sort of go through the pain and like, I just wasn't working for me. Something wasn't resonating. I wasn't aligned. So luckily, 3 weeks after I got out of college, I got on a plane, flew to Paris, and started a job as a mailboy for a few months, and then found another job. I was traveling around Europe for a few months with friends, came back, and started to live a little bit here in Paris. And in that time, I realized very quickly that even though it looked very sexy to be a lawyer on LA Law and these other TV shows that I was, immersed in at the time, sexy, nice cars, great clothing, overall it was a default decision for me. I didn't want to become a lawyer at all. I didn't like fighting with people and verbally, I have like my own kind of logic, but not that kind of logic, and just because I'd done good in school didn't mean that that's what I should do with my life. We sometimes get really good at things that we shouldn't be doing, right? It's like you sometimes say in your job, don't get too good at the things you don't want to, end up doing or being, because everyone's coming to you for that. They look at you and say, oh my God, you did that so amazingly. And you hate it. Yeah. So
it's
I was lucky
to know what you want to do with the rest of your life when you're like 21 or young. How are you supposed to know? You don't know at that age. You have to just figure it out, really.
Yeah, you have to figure it out. And there's so much pressure. And also, in one respect, society is kind of telling you what you should decide.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes you think a little bit about what they're doing now in Finland, right, with the school teaching, where it seems they don't even have homework anymore. And for me, that seems like that would be almost a better kind of shifting for people to actually really they have to go from inside to out to come up with, using their creativity and their imagination, the resourcefulness to say, what are my next step? It's not like, there's this infinitude of choice today. We don't realize how spoiled we are. We focus on all the bad news because the bad news is like ubiquitous. But there's so many amazing things that are happening in the world. So there's so many people doing extraordinary things that we can model, follow, work with, grow with, support, instead of necessarily, railing about this and complaining and, endlessly fighting and stuff. And of course, there's a time for, rebelling and fighting and all these things, surely, and protesting, et cetera. I'm not saying that. But when we get too fixated on that, it becomes our excuse, and we start following that path too much. Yeah. I feel you end up making the bad choices. I probably would have gone to law school if I was more feeling that way and thinking, there's something inside me said, there's something else going on. Give yourself the time to roam. Another thing we never let ourselves do, let yourself roam without a purpose. This whole concept that those that wander are not all lost. There's this downtime, this moment where you get into your senses and you do stuff that brings you a certain amount of pleasure. And if your radar is a little bit on, you have an intention of receiving, you can get, information that's coming to you and also from you in a way that's not blocked and influenced by so many of these layers of media bombardment and cinema. It's like me going back into Beverly Hills and saying, if I can't, at 16 have a Ferrari and, live in a 20 room mansion and be able to do whatever I want, that, my life's a failure. And that's so wrong.
Yeah.
It's so wrong.
That's so up in those confines, isn't it? That if you don't tick those boxes or you live a certain way, or you get, like you said, you don't, if you were brought up in that environment, then to go to law school was the next thing, get a good job, get a decent degree, all of those things. And of course, that's the thing we want to break with Kitty Talks, is to say, actually, you're a living example of creating a lifestyle around something that you love and you enjoy, and actually you can't put you in a box, because actually what you're doing is so new paradigm and so out there. And we want to show people that actually that is highly and truly possible, like you said, with what is available nowadays. We can manifest and create our own realities. We just have to realize that it all comes from us, basically.
Yeah, and I even, it seems in some ways it's harder today, in some ways it's easier today. When I left I've been now in France for 25 years. And when I came, it was, it was a completely different place than it is now.
Wow.
With more opportunities on some levels, and other ways it was much more complicated. But really, it's, again, no matter, it's like a timeless situation. I really feel it's really when you start to take the ownership for it, to even if it means taking a break, leaving a job you hate, not choosing to go to a certain school, but doing something, not doing nothing necessarily entirely, I guess, but giving yourself the permission to do that, and also getting very strategic about how you can actually make that a possibility for yourself.
Yeah.
Do you have to save money for a year and not, go out to the pub every night, whatever it is?
Yeah.
And learn to actually cook better. Learn to actually, buy a beer in bulk so that you can have it at home at 25% less expensive. Whatever it is, when you get a little bit more strategic about these things, it's certainly a way to tactically get yourself into a position where maybe you can take a longer time off to give yourself that break. Because it takes a little bit of getting out of this like unbelievable filtering, this like brainwashing kind of stuff that's going on. And I did this sort of a similar thing when I left my movie business job about 5 years ago. I said, I'm going to let myself roam a little bit. I'm kind of going to go like this. And, I did everything I possibly can to position myself to be able to have that opportunity and make the sacrifices and get strategic about it and tactical. And, that again enabled me to have the room and the space to roam a bit, to explore a bit, to adventure a bit, to test and try and experiment. All these things that lead to transformation and change and shift of life, of career, of relationships, but we've got to get a little bit out of this like crazy thing here and dip a little bit deeper, maybe into the subconscious, which our senses help us do a lot.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're born into a rat race, aren't we? And then when we don't necessarily know when we're younger that there is a rat race. You don't even know. You just take that for gospel that is your reality. And actually, it's only when we have those moments where we shift out that we can actually realize that there's so many simultaneous worlds happening around one another. And actually, what we bought into or what we were sold doesn't necessarily have to be our reality. So tell me a bit more. You came to Paris. You said you took a number of different jobs, and then what happened next?
When I came to Paris, I basically taught English here for about 4.5 years. I was learning the language. I didn't surround myself by any expatriates. I was really hanging out with French people. I was like, I came here to learn the culture, to learn the language. I'm like, if I can't make people laugh in their language here, I'm troubled. So in the meantime, I'm using facial expressions to make them laugh and do whatever, and to learn the language very quickly in the way that I best knew to learn, which wasn't going to school, but was a lot of reading on my own, a lot of talking, a lot of listening, using, again, all of my senses to absorb and read signs. And I just spent a lot of time doing those kinds of things, giving myself a certain momentum to accelerating, learning the language through culture, through hanging out with with French people, really, which really gave me an immersion that all people talk about, and then they come here and they like hang out with expatriates, and it's like, well, no, it
takes guts to do that, like to
sure. You don't understand a lot of stuff, but again, it's like think about us losing some senses. This is like another ultimate experience. You come into a situation, it's like, I don't understand. Well, what happens when the blind guy walks in? What happens when the deaf person walks in? What happens when the person who can't smell is having a dinner at a 4-star restaurant? There's so many other things going on that you can rely on to connect with people, energetically, the way that you reach out to them, expressing what you can, making the effort to actually share that, and just being very attentive. You can understand a lot more than you believe you can, and that we all get over this, again, this like seriousness of like, oh, I have this bad accent. I mean, let other people decide that. Stop believing these things,
Yeah.
So for me, it was a big jump. It was kind of an adventurous jump to a completely new, very strong culture. I was so amazed. I mean, again, the naivete you can have when you live in certain places. I mean, the United States with its huge TV and music culture, and even the UK, in a lot of ways, the music culture. I remember when I did a little trip around Europe, and I was actually in Spain in a place called Ronda, which is this gorgeous very deep ravine town, medieval, etc. And I went to a nightclub. I was all alone. I went to a nightclub that night and walked in. It was packed, and all they played for like 4 hours was Spanish music, Spanish language music, which was mostly Spanish music. And I was like, first of all, I'm like stunned. I'm like, is there that much Spanish music? Right? I mean, how silly and naive was I about all the other cultures that exist in the world, all the other, music, all the other values and things, all the other ways of looking at the world. It was really like a cold shower to me. I mean, people singing all night long and dancing as if they were listening to the stuff that we sing and dance to, except we have no sense that that exists.
Yeah.
We have no appreciation for that. We have no exposure to that. We have no initiation to that. So getting a little bit out of this sort of hegemonic way of seeing your life, your world, there's only one way, there's only one path, it's all IBM or nothing, there's a lot more colors, a lot more variety, a lot more choice than we can appreciate. So for me, that was a huge part of that coming here, was suddenly realizing, there's all these 25 different countries around within 2 hours by flight. And it was such an incredible eye-opener, which today I still can't believe, how fortunate I am to live in Paris. I mean, I'm pinching myself every day, or when I walk outside, I sometimes do videos about that. I just look like I'm just like this silly, like I just got off the boat. I'm like, oh my God, I live in Paris, which is pretty rare, actually. A lot of people's, most visited country, pretty much, most visited city. That's debatable, all that stuff, but okay, we'll say it that way. For Americans, there's only 0.025% of all Americans worldwide live in France.
Wow.
So I'm part of live here, that are residents. They're not people just passing for a couple of years, don't have second homes, are not just, people who've actually lived and made a life here. It's
your wife is French, isn't she?
My wife is French, yeah.
Fantastic. So you're there for good now. That's it pretty much, right?
Well, here and all over the world.
Well, absolutely. So then when was the idea of the sensorial experience born?
That was really a couple of years ago. I mean, I'd been spending a time when I left the movie industry about 4 years ago. I was really into food in the sense of cooking it and realizing the power that food has to gather people. And when you put the right intention around the food, and you create a celebration, festiveness, like 3-star experience around food, and even in your own home for people that you welcome, in what you prepare, how you prepare it, how you talk about it, how you explain it, how you tell about it, how your passion is infused through what you're actually creating. And it's really an artwork and almost a meditation also. Once you do that, kind of enough, you start to realize that there's so much in the joy of everyday living that can come through these shared moments around food. And so we have a few of these every day if we're lucky, and if we use them well, and we get strategic about how to actually make that something that's pleasurable, that's a moment of grace and giving of love, that's a moment of self-care, that's a moment that's meditative. I mean, it's really incredible to me how many people have, again, been influenced by a very negative perception of what it is to actually spend time, cooking your own food, really, and what that sort of all that involves. That it's such a task, that just this horribly time-consuming, all these like negative words, right? When for me, it's like there's almost nothing more beautiful than cooking and spending time with food and feeling things with your hands and buying gorgeous products. And actually, when you're actually sourcing stuff, developing relationships with the people that you actually buy things from. So they know who you are, they know what you love, their excellence is your excellence. I mean, there's so many things, the whole creativity element that comes beyond creating food, the whole spontaneity, the whole not following recipes, creating from nothing. I mean, there's so many elements to it that for me are the basis of actually creating a gorgeous daily existence that can be full of so much beauty with very small changes actually in the way that you go about things. I mean, let's be real. You got to spend a bit of time. But you got to spend a bit of time with anything to get kind of good at it, or even to appreciate, or even to know what you don't know, right? And so I had such a passion for that, what food had actually, how it had transformed my life, my vision of what makes life beautiful. Spending time with people around a gorgeous meal for hours, and actually the entertainment is us.
Yes.
You don't have to say, "Oh, we're going somewhere afterwards." Not that that's not great, also, but it's like the entertainment is us. It's our stories. It's suddenly someone is singing. It's suddenly someone's playing a guitar. We're telling stories about our family. We're connecting more deeply. Again, if we do this in a bit of a way that really opens up, we have such an opportunity where we're in a moment of, again, I come back to this pleasure and release and freedom. We feel good when we're sitting in these moments here. And that's the greatest moment to actually open up and share. We feel trusted. We feel loved. We're eating something from somebody which takes a lot of trust.
Yeah.
We're believing that the food is healthy and nourishing, and yet also beautiful and gorgeous, enticing, smells good. And you can tell it was prepared by someone who wants to transmit their love to us. Yeah. And they're caring, they're attentive, they're sending us a message that you mean something to me. So there's a lot of meaning around that. So I actually jumped from my job to say, I'm going to do a startup, kind of like Airbnb. I'm going to gather people around food around the world. I'm going to go to Kitty's place because I see that, she lives in a place in the UK I want to go visit, and she's interested in this and that and this. I'm going to go be able to talk with her. She'll be able to tell me about the local stuff. And it'd be like we're friends. I'd show up and, it'd be something like instant moment of being welcomed from friends in a place maybe you never knew. Well, you don't know anybody.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't the first to come up with this idea, but I was certainly the most passionate about it. Wow. And yet it didn't really go anywhere because I got a little bit of a feeling in my gut that I was leading to something that was going to be very impersonal, and suddenly venture capitalists, and suddenly, I was creating something where actually, well, wait a minute, I want to be part of the meal. And I don't want to just build a platform that allows people to do that. Mm-hmm. So I jumped from there, and a couple of weeks after it, I turned to go do a coaching experience in the UK, and had a gorgeous experience in something very, very emotional, full of feeling and imagination stuff. I was like, wow, this is extraordinary. And that kind of opened me up to this other sense that, again, always been very fascinated by how we expand and how we grow. And at the same time, really believe that things are more like nature, that, we go organically, with parasites or not, or whatever. I mean, there's this kind of like wild jungle thing, versus sort of like the only man-made, only driven by the head, only, rational kinds of things. And I felt a lot more free in this kind of a space of creativity. So I wanted to mix these kinds of things together. And I'd been looking at somebody named John Levy, also out of New York, who does something called the Influencer Dinners. You can read about that online. He was gathering lots of luminaries of different fields, of scientists, of actors, and all these kinds of things, and bringing them into to space to actually cook together. And so there'd been that. There'd been some other sort of high-level mastermind groups that I'd attended, because I was saying I want to gather people. I'm just trying to find the right mix of things, and also make it something that would be tremendously meaningful for people. So it's a perfect blend between going to, let's say, like a dinner party, a 4-star chef tasting menu event, going out maybe to the theater or to an improv class. And at the same time, maybe there's a part of it that's really about, how do we grow ourselves in this world without it being something that's on the extreme of, kind of hardcore, transformational work that's just a little bit too square for me, a little bit too rigid feeling for me, a little bit too perhaps structured in some ways for me. So it was like, how could I actually mix all these things that really fascinate me into an experience that could really be driven by pleasure, and again, not pain, driven a lot more by how do we drop into something more embodied, more, soma, more touching our emotions and our feelings, and to get out of here, which, I mean, I just go on Google if you want to stay here, right? But, bringing this into something that's a little bit, more leaning on the beauty of life and what we can share and learn from each other and absorb and give and receive, and that the generosity, the abundance of life is in this kind of an experience. And if you come into it and you can't talk about your work and you can't ask where someone's from and you can't do this little chat that is a kind of a distraction politesse or whatever it is, and you actually get to more of the kind of essentials without really even aiming to do that, but you got to kind of connect in a different way.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets interesting for me. It's this is how we actually really connect to other people from an energetic heart place. And so I created an evening that originally it started with one very well-known speaker friend who was coming to Paris, and I kind of was curating an event around her, and I'd never done something public around her or with anyone. And it was kind of getting close to the event, and no one was buying tickets, and I didn't know what to do. I kind of panicked, really, and started reaching. Sorry,
it was typical in the events world. No one buys right till the last minute.
Yeah, so I had no idea. So I started to reach out, and I reached out to a lot of people, including Gary Llewellyn-Davies, who you know well, and I actually gathered 10 different contributors to this experience, 5 who were speaker people. With various fascinating subjects. On the other side, I had 5 live performance artists of different natures. So I kind of, out of kind of a position of angst, trying to create more pleasure for everybody and bring more value into experience. And of course, we filled up. And it was like this crazy evening with like 15 courses served. And it was all done kind of one after the other, because it's a lot about really bringing your attention and your reception and your life energy and everything to one person who's either performing, or we're eating a dish together and we're appreciating the beauty, and I'm telling a story behind it, and I'm really bringing you into a very focused appreciation of what you're sensing. So it's a bit of a sort of initiation to how can you go a little bit deeper than, oh, this tastes good. Well, let's just stay with that a little bit, and let's also try and externalize it and express it with words or, expressions on our face or whatever kind of comes out, to just kind of stay with that a little bit longer together. And on the same thing, and not be distracted by, there's also someone speaking or talking or performing, so there's all these like sensory things of overload, and let's kind of spare that out a little bit, so that we can go a little bit more deeper on some of these things together. And amazingly, this really liberates you from an overly intellectualized mental, perception of what's kind of happening to you.
And you just have some fun with it by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
It just sounds amazing.
It's all, it's mostly, there are moments of, different kinds of tears, whether it's happiness or sadness, depends on kind of what's going on, because that's all part of it. Again, for me, it's really opening up people to sensing that, everything that we experience is we have to be really open to and brave, I would say, to let like life, happen to us, and also us create the life we want to have. And that sometimes that takes a certain emotional energy to surmount a lot of the stuff that we're living in, a certain resiliency also with everything that happens, so we can get over things quickly and keep going on. With our heart in it. And, bringing artists are like the greatest example of people who pursue their passion and feel that that's their purpose of actually teaching people is through music, is through their art. And I feel nothing is more beautiful than spending time with artists. And that's one thing I would say to everyone who's listening here. If you don't have artist friends, or people that, maybe have jobs, but they play the guitar or whatever, spend more time with these people, create experiences, gather people around for these. It's different than going to a public concert, a public thing. Do something a little bit more intimate kind of settings, and you'll just really, you'll open up a certain side of yourself through your sensory perception and feeling of things that, will generate this, like crying in the movie thing that we get, which is such a great experience, or, laughed like crazy laughter, like you can't stop yourself. And, it's in those moments where we can really connect more deeply with ourselves. If we have just a little bit of an attention of being aware you suddenly say, wow, I get so much pleasure here, so much joy here. I want to do more of this. I want to pursue more of this. And you start to actually, open up possibilities, I feel, for yourself.
And what's next, David? Like, you're planning some amazing events across the globe. Amazing experiences, I would say, rather than events. And what's next for you?
Yeah, I always wonder, how much you should talk about what's next for you. But
or we can just stay in the moment. Absolutely.
But I can tell you, because we just never know. At the end of the day, you go after something. And again, I'm so much about, I want today to be amazing. I don't want to delegate my pleasure and my purpose, my mission, everything, other than really making today, this time with you, any moment, to make it a celebration, make it really joyful. So as much as I can when I do that, the more that I do that, the more, the more rich my life is, the more abundant my life feels, the more appreciative and, gratitude that I feel. And suddenly you see my luck starts happening and things open up to me and I get the ideas and I get the support, and it's really quite amazing. But with this said, we are taking Sensorial Experience Day to 4 continents this year in 2017. Oh, wow. So we're working on that quite actively, really the focus is there. I have other vehicles to share with people in different forms coming this year, but I'm kind of keeping them for the moment a little bit tight to the chest. But watch this spot. Really, I want to be able to support as many people as I can to reconnect with this sense of feeling alive, which is really dependent only on them. They don't, it's up to them to create this ongoing deeper joy, and to be able to kind of snap out of it, kind of become their own pattern breaker in life. The better we can get at that, the more quickly we get out of things and just keep rolling and climbing our own path. And I believe everything else kind of falls into place.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Like, by staying in the moment, like you said, by staying in the moment, really in the present, everything, you flow, don't you? You don't need to be kind of disconnected. You don't need to be thinking what's next. You're just flowing with life, and you know the right things are coming in. Thank you so much for listening to Kitty Talks. Be sure to head over to our kittytalks.com website and become a member of our exclusive club, and you'll get free interviews and access to our private Facebook group, exclusive webinars and secret success interviews. See you there.